He's the oldest human specimen we have that is so complete, so well preserved, with all the scientific disciplines that are intrigued by him, that want answers. He may well be the most studied human being in history.
Deep beneath the ice, untouched for thousands of years, a man waited for his story to be heard. Who was he? How did he die? And what chilling secret did he carry to his frozen grave? Ötzi, the Iceman mystery, finally solved, reveals something terrifying, a truth far more haunting than anyone ever expected. Let's discover together.
He provides a window into what life looked like 5,000 years ago in Europe. So it's kind of like finding the Ark of the Covenant. How important is that? Yeah, it's pretty important.
Ötzi's actual cause of death was hypothermia. After being wounded and weakened, he likely became trapped high in the Alps, unable to find shelter or move quickly. As the cold closed in, his body temperature dropped lower and lower until he slipped into unconsciousness and quietly froze to death. In the end, it was not the violence that killed him, but the slow and merciless power of nature. For more than 30 years, researchers from across the globe have been making their way to a museum in the Italian Alps. They have all been drawn there by one incredible discovery: a man who lived over 5,000 years ago. This ancient figure is known as Ötzi the Iceman, a name inspired by the nearby Ötztal Alps, where he was uncovered back in the year 1991. Standing about 5 feet, 2 inches tall, and weighing around 110 pounds, Ötzi is not just any historical find. He is a mummy, but not like the ones from ancient Egypt. Instead of being dried with salts, stuffed with linen, and coated in resin like Egyptian mummies, Ötzi was preserved naturally by the freezing cold temperatures high in the mountains. His body became freeze-dried, almost as if time had paused the very day he died. The preservation was so incredible that when 2 hikers first spotted part of his upper body sticking out from a shallow ditch in an icy field, they believed they had found a mountaineer who had recently passed away. However, experts performed radiocarbon tests on his tissues a few days later. The results were shocking. Ötzi had died around 3250 BCE, making him the oldest naturally preserved mummy ever discovered.
The Iceman is kept under sterile condition in this refrigeration cell, and that's why we have to take care who is entering the cell, because we want to avoid that anybody brings in any kind of contamination.
Yeah, ready to go.
Scientists studied his bones and concluded that he was about 45 years old at the time of his death, which was considered quite an old age during that ancient period. As the investigation continued, archaeologist Konrad Spindler examined the tools and equipment found alongside Ötzi. Based on what he saw, he guessed that the Iceman was about 4,000 years old. However, shortly afterward, radiocarbon dating proved that Spindler's estimate missed the mark by more than 1,000 years. This surprising revelation added even more mystery and fascination to Ötzi's story, making scientists even more eager to learn what secrets this ancient traveler might still be hiding. The discovery of Ötzi's body opened an unexpected window into life during the Copper Age. This period stretched from around 3,500 before the Common Era to about 2,200 before the Common Era. It got its name because people started smelling copper, increasingly using it to make tools that had once been crafted only from stone. It was a time when communities built stone houses, planted crops like wheat and barley, and raised animals such as sheep and goats. Along with farming, people hunted wild animals to add more variety to their diets. Even though only Ötzi's body, some scraps of his clothing, and a handful of his tools survived the passage of time, scientists uncovered amazing details about his life. They managed to figure out how he died, what his last meals included, and even the illnesses he carried, many of which he likely had no idea about during his lifetime. Through a bold experiment, researchers even discovered how he probably ended up with 61 tattoos scattered across his body, an impressive number for someone living thousands of years ago. Access to Ötzi allows scientists and historians to truly see and understand what life might have looked like in the distant past. While only professional researchers can directly study Ötzi up close, everyday visitors have not been left out. Anyone interested can see his preserved body at the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Bolzano, Italy. There, he is kept frozen to maintain his condition. Besides seeing Ötzi himself, visitors can also admire his bearskin hat, view the tools he carried, and even stand beside a life-sized model of the Iceman, dressed in faithful recreations of the leather and fur clothing he wore when he met his end. Much like the twists and turns in a good mystery story, Ötzi slowly revealed the secrets of his life piece by piece. The first person to take a closer look at his past was Conrad Spindler, the archaeologist who examined the mummy shortly after it was pulled from the ice. Archaeologists study ancient tools, ruins, and remains to understand how people lived long ago. When Spindler spotted the copper-bladed axe and the flint dagger found near Ötzi's body, he immediately realized something important. Ötzi was not a modern-day mountaineer who had simply gotten lost in the mountains. In the days that followed the discovery, even more artifacts were recovered from around the spot where Ötzi had been found. His resting place was about 3,210 meters, or roughly 10,500 feet, above sea level. Among the items discovered were 14 arrows, a bow that had not yet been completed, a leather pouch, the wooden frame of a backpack, and several pieces of his clothing. Each find added a little more to the growing story of who Ötzi had been and how he might have met his end. Spindler pieced together a theory about Ötzi's final moments based on these discoveries. Since some arrows were broken and the bow was left unfinished, he guessed that Ötzi might have been attacked or caught up in conflict. Spindler suggested that after the struggle, Ötzi fled up into the mountains, trying to escape danger. Exhausted and likely wounded, he collapsed into a small gully where the cold eventually overtook him, preserving his body for thousands of years. Ötzi's discovery quickly captured the attention of scientists from many different fields. Everyone wanted to be part of solving the mystery hidden within his frozen body. One of the biggest breakthroughs came in the year 2001. During an X-ray examination, researchers found something shocking. A tiny arrowhead, just about 13 millimeters long, lodged between Ötzi's rib cage and his left shoulder blade.
We could reconstruct then the area where the arrow entered the body and disrupted a major artery of the left arm. If you're losing so much blood that maybe after 10-15 minutes you're dead.
Earlier teams had missed this clue because the arrow's wooden shaft had broken off, most likely pulled out by whoever attacked him. Once the arrowhead was discovered, scientists looked closer at Ötzi's back. They noticed a fresh, unhealed wound where the arrow had pierced through his body. Later, when a more advanced computed tomography or CT scan was used, it revealed something even more serious. The arrow had sliced through Ötzi's subclavian artery, a major blood vessel near the shoulder. Damage to this artery would have caused him to bleed out very quickly. Chemical tests added even more weight to this discovery. Scientists found a protein called fibrin in the blood cells around the wound. Fibrin forms quickly at a wound site to help blood clot, but it also disappears quickly. The fact that fibrin was still there showed that Ötzi died shortly after getting wounded, with no time for his body to start healing. These new findings completely changed the original story about how Ötzi died. Instead of freezing to death from exhaustion, it now became clear that he had been fatally wounded in a violent encounter. However, the idea that he had been in a conflict, as Spindler had suspected earlier, still held true. Adding to the evidence, scientists later found a knife cut on Ötzi's hand. Frank Meixner, a molecular biologist at the Urach Institute for Mummy Studies in Bolzano, Italy, explained that the injury was probably 2 or 3 days old by the time Ötzi died. This detail suggested that Ötzi might have been attacked more than once, or had been living on the run for several days before meeting his tragic end. But now, Ötzi, the Iceman mystery, is finally solved, revealing something terrifying. Over the years, Ötzi the Iceman has been put under some of the most advanced investigations science can offer. Researchers have left no stone unturned, from high-resolution CT scans to deep forensic examinations. And as technology kept improving, so did the understanding of his final moments. Recently, a team from the University of Zurich took a closer look, using cutting-edge imaging tools. What they found turned many long-held beliefs upside down. Let's start with the arrow wound. For years, many believed that it was the arrow that ended Ötzi's life. But the truth came out a little different when scientists looked again using detailed CT scans. The stone arrowhead had pierced his shoulder, but it had not dug in as deeply as once thought. It had damaged a blood vessel, yes, but not a major artery. Instead of causing a massive, rapid bleed-out, the injury led to a much smaller internal bleeding, about 100 milliliters, roughly half a cup. Painful, no doubt. Crippling, probably. But how immediately fatal? Not likely. Then they turned their attention to the injuries on his head. Earlier theories imagined a brutal blow during a fight, but the new scans told a different story. The fractures and dents in his skull looked more like the result of a nasty fall, not an attack. Anyone who's ever walked through rocky mountain trails knows how easy it is to stumble. Ötzi had been wearing a fur cap, and while it might have softened the impact a little, it wasn't enough to save him from serious harm. Even so, the head injury, like the arrow wound, wouldn't have killed him right away. So, if it wasn't the arrow and it wasn't the head injury, what really ended Ötzi's life? The answer, it turns out, is both heartbreaking and brutally simple. The cold, trapped high in the Alps, injured and unable to move properly, Ötzi likely faced dropping temperatures with no way out. As the cold crept in, his body would have shut down. Hypothermia sets in silently. First comes the confusion, then exhaustion. Eventually, the body just stops fighting. Researchers believe that once he collapsed, he might have had only a few minutes to a few painful hours before the freezing conditions claimed him. In many ways, this slow death would have been even crueler than a quick injury. Instead of a sudden end, Ötzi's last moments were probably spent alone, injured, shivering, and slowly slipping away into unconsciousness. But even though it seems nature dealt the final blow, the signs of conflict in Ötzi's last days are still clear. The arrow wound and the cut on his hand tell a story of violence before he makes his final climb. Pollen found in his gut and chemical clues from his teeth suggest he moved between different parts of the mountains, maybe living a nomadic life or running from someone. When it comes to Ötzi the Iceman, there is something even more fascinating than the weapons he carried, how he lived, and the marks he left on his own skin. Across his body, scientists found 61 tattoos scattered along his lower back, abdomen, legs, and wrists. These were not colorful designs or pictures like modern tattoos. They were simple lines and crosses, but they carried mysteries deeper than anyone had ever imagined. For a long time, experts wondered how these tattoos were made. Early guesses suggested someone might have cut the skin and rubbed pigment into the wounds. It made sense at the time. But the real answer stayed hidden for decades, buried just as deeply as Ötzi himself once was. That changed when a team of researchers decided to solve the puzzle. This group included archaeologists, a professional tattoo artist, and even an Inuit tattoo master. Together, they set up a daring experiment. Instead of guessing, they tested ancient techniques hard on real skin. Using tools like bone needles, sharp obsidian flakes, and copper points, they recreated the tattoos that could have existed in Ötzi's world. Over 6 months, they watched carefully as the tattoos healed, studying every line, every scar, and every shade of color that appeared. Their patience paid off. They finally cracked the code by comparing their experimental tattoos to those on Ötzi's skin. The tattoos had not been carved. Instead, they were made using a method called hand-poke tattooing. A sharp tool, probably a bone needle or a copper point, was used to gently but repeatedly poke the skin, pushing pigment into the tiny holes to create a series of dots that formed lines and simple shapes. But the real surprise came when they connected the tattoo method to the tools found with Ötzi himself. Among his belongings were not just weapons like a copper axe and a flint dagger. He also carried a leather pouch filled with curious items, a scraper, a piece of fungus used for fire starting, and a pointed bone tool. That bone tool looked almost identical to the ones used during the tattoo experiment. This raised an amazing idea. Ötzi might have used the same simple tools for survival and body art. The same tool that repaired his clothing or helped him in daily life might also have been used to mark his skin, either for healing, ritual, or for reasons we may never fully understand. And why did he have so many tattoos? Theories suggest they were not just for decoration. Many tattoos are placed over joints and body areas, showing signs of wear and damage. Some researchers believe they were a form of early therapy, similar to acupuncture, meant to ease pain in a world without doctors or medicines. Others think the tattoos might have held a deeper meaning, symbolizing status, achievements, protection, or spiritual beliefs. Each tattoo tells part of Ötzi's story. They remind us that even 5,000 years ago, humans looked for ways to heal, to mark their journeys, and perhaps to carry a piece of their spirit on their skin. Ötzi's clothing tells an incredible story all on its own, a story of survival, resourcefulness, and craftsmanship from a world long gone. From head to toe, he was dressed to take on the harsh elements of the Alps. Instead of wearing anything fancy, Ötzi's outfit was purely practical. He wore a long cloak made from woven grass, a coat, leggings, a belt, a loincloth, and shoes, all stitched together from different types of leather. Each piece of clothing came from a different animal, carefully chosen for its strength and warmth. Topping it off, he had a bearskin cap held in place by a leather chin strap, the perfect protection against the mountain winds. But what really amazed researchers was his footwear. His shoes were surprisingly advanced, waterproof, wide, and clearly built for trekking across snowy landscapes. They were made with bearskin soles for toughness, deer hide for the upper part, and netting made from tree bark to give structure. Soft grass was packed around the foot inside the shoe, almost like a cozy pair of socks. It was simple, clever, and incredibly effective. The rest of his outfit showed the same attention to detail. His coat, leggings, loincloth, and belt were made from strips of leather sewn together with sinew, the strong fibers taken from animal tendons. His belt was not just for holding up his clothes. It had a small pouch stitched onto it and filled with useful tools. Researchers found a scraper, a drill, a sharp flint flake, a bone awl for making holes, and even a piece of dried fungus, likely used for starting fires. The craftsmanship of Ötzi's shoes was so impressive that a Czech scholar decided to recreate them. After walking in the replicas, he was convinced that even 5,300 years ago, there must have been specialists like ancient cobblers who made shoes professionally for others. In fact, the recreated shoes were so practical that a Czech company even offered to buy the rights to produce and sell them. However, not everyone agrees with the first theory about his footwear. A British archaeologist named Jackie Wood later suggested a different idea. She believed that what some call Ötzi's shoes might have been snowshoes' upper part. According to her, the wooden frame and netting found near his body were likely part of a snowshoe, and the leather hide would have been used to cover the foot against the snow. The leather loincloth and hide coat that protected Ötzi's body were crafted from sheepskin, but not just any sheep. Genetic tests showed that the animals were closely related to today's domesticated European sheep, not wild ones. The coat alone was pieced together using the skins of at least 4 animals, stitched carefully to create one strong garment. Part of the coat came from a domesticated goat, whose ancestry traces back to a mitochondrial group still in Central Europe today. So, Ötzi's coat was not just a simple cover against the cold. It was a patchwork made from different animals, blended together for both strength and warmth. His leggings, too, were made from goat leather, just like another set of 5,000-year-old leggings discovered at a site called Schneedejoch in Switzerland. This shows that using goat hides for clothing might have been a common practice across the alpine regions during that ancient time. But the discoveries did not stop there. A team of researchers from Ireland and Italy analyzed the mitochondrial DNA from 6 pieces of Ötzi's clothing. Their findings added even more fascinating details. They found that the shoelaces tying his shoes were made from European cattle leather. His quiver, the case used for carrying arrows, was crafted from the hide of a wild roe deer, and the fur cap he wore on his head came from a brown bear, a lineage that still roams the region today. Ötzi's story reminds us that even after thousands of years, the past still has the power to speak to us. As the old proverb says, the past is never dead. It is not even past. Every discovery about Ötzi keeps breathing new life into his frozen world, reminding us that history is not just about dates and facts. It is about real people, real journeys, and real dreams. If you enjoyed uncovering the Iceman's hidden secrets, give this video a thumbs up. If you want to keep exploring the mysteries of the ancient world, make sure to subscribe to the channel and join the journey. Now, here's a question. What would you want to know if you could ask Ötzi one question about his life? Share your thoughts in the comments. It would be amazing to hear your ideas.